What's up everyone and welcome back to the World History Channel. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button today. Let's get started. The excruciating story of Marita Lorenz, the real-life spy who besotted Fidel Castro. There are few people in the world who have lived lives as exciting as that of Marita Lorenz. She was raised in a family that was very familiar with the world of espionage. She was born into Nazi Germany during the chaos of World War II. Dubbed the Mata Hari of the Caribbean, Lorenz was at the core of a Fidel Castro assassination attempt, was Castro's on-and-off lover for decades, met Lee Harvey Oswald just before the assassination of President Kennedy, and had a 25-year career as a spy and informant. She also had children with a former Venezuelan dictator and a small-time New York gangster. As if that weren't enough, her life has been jam-packed with adventure, espionage, and unbelievable twists and turns. This list covers the highlights, low points, and moments that some people still find tough to believe. Marita Lorenz is a force of nature, whether you fully believe every story she tells or not. It was love at first sight with El Comandante. In February of 1959, 19-year-old Marita was working aboard one of her father's luxury cruise ships on a trip to Havana, Cuba. When the ship arrived in the harbor, it was greeted by Fidel Castro himself, the newly minted leader of Cuba. While Marita was initially intimidated by the boat of armed, bearded men approaching the ship, the feeling quickly faded. 33-year-old Castro was immediately taken with Lorenz, and the feeling was mutual. He was Marita's first love, and their affair, which lasted for months, would kick off decades of lust, intrigue, and love. Lorenz recalls that first meeting. "I was standing on the bridge, and in the distance I could see this launch coming toward us. It was filled with around 27 men, all with the same beard. One was taller than the others. Standing on the bow, he was armed with a rifle. The tall one yelled out, 'I want to come aboard.' I asked who he was, and he started laughing and flashing a lot of teeth. 'Yo soy Cuba,' he said. 'Comandante Fidel Castro.' While pregnant with Castro's child, Lorenz was drugged, and the baby mysteriously disappeared. In October of 1959, Marita was 7 months pregnant with Fidel Castro's child. In her 1993 interview with Vanity Fair, she claims she was slipped a drug and woke up hours later in a hospital bed. She also claims that she was told the baby was fine and had been taken away. However, in 1959, she told a different story. In this one, she returned to New York and was treated at a hospital for a botched abortion that she had in Havana. She continues to assert that Andre, her son with Fidel, is alive and that she was able to meet him on one visit to Cuba. Then Andre came in. "It's alive, oh my God, I just looked at it. It's real. My God, it's mine. It's got my mouth, my eyes. Oh God, it's got Fidel's nose. The first thing I noticed was his white skin and Fidel's curly hair. And I started to cry. He speaks English too. He's a doctor, a pediatrician. I said, 'It's nice, Fidel. You did a beautiful job.'" Lorenz went from lover to informant and assassin. Eventually, CIA officials were able to flip Lorenz. Her first mission: kill her former lover. She was given pills to poison him, briefed on the details of what she needed to do, and sent back to Cuba. When she arrived, she found she didn't have the heart to go through with her mission. She had also placed the poison capsules in a jar of cold cream, ruining them. Succumbing to her heart instead of her head, she spent a night of passion with Castro instead of ending his life. Some of her co-workers are of the opinion that the Bay of Pigs invasion would not have occurred if she had carried out her task as planned. She claimed to have met Lee Harvey Oswald and joined him on a road trip to kill JFK. In an infamous 1977 interview with New York Daily News, Lorenz made a bombshell claim. According to her, while training with the anti-Castro CIA group Operation 40, which she described as an assassination squad, in the Florida Everglades, she met a man at the camp named Lee Harvey Oswald. He was a man who would soon be remembered for killing President John F. Kennedy. In 1960, there were a lot of negative feelings toward both Fidel Castro and President Kennedy, especially among members of the CIA who blamed Kennedy for the Bay of Pigs failure. Lorenz claims that a secretive road trip was planned to Dallas, and the group left in a 3-car convoy that drove for 2 days straight. Lorenz claims to have left the group and flown home before she found out what the mission really was. Allegedly, she heard that the president had been shot in Dallas while on an airplane. Her testimony claiming that her fellow Operation 40 members planned and committed the assassination has been highly contested for decades. As Frank Sturgis, one of her alleged companions on the drive, put it in a 1993 interview with Vanity Fair, Lorenz kept changing who the people were in the cars. It's ridiculous. I'm not saying that everything that Marita says is a lie, but she'll do anything for money. She shacked up with the Venezuelan dictator she was targeting while working for the CIA. According to Lorenz's daughter Monica, one of her missions involved the newly deposed dictator of Venezuela, Marcos Pérez Jiménez. After the two met in Miami in March of 1961, Pérez Jiménez pursued her relentlessly until she became his mistress. She became pregnant with their daughter Monica, after 1 month of being with Pérez Jiménez. For a few years, he took care of them whatever way he could, even though he was already married with children, and they lived a peaceful life. But, after a legal dispute when Monica was quite young, Lorenz was left penniless and never saw another dime of Pérez Jiménez's multi-million-dollar fortune. She got abandoned in Venezuela and had to live with a native tribe for 9 months. Lorenz made the decision to travel to Venezuela in May 1963, 6 months after President Kennedy's death, in an effort to get in touch with the father of her daughter, the former dictator Marcos Pérez Jiménez. Pérez Jiménez was in prison at the time, and Marita was thrown into the jail cell beside his. Once she was released from jail, she was offered a sightseeing tour by 2 local intelligence agents. Instead of the promised tour, Lorenz and Monica were flown into the middle of the Amazon rainforest and abandoned. She claims she and her daughter lived with an Amazonian tribe for 9 months, and of all of her wild stories, biographers say there is actually enough detail to prove that it's true. She did a stint in a German concentration camp. Marita was born in Germany to a German father, a U-boat captain, and an American mother, who harbored anti-Nazi sentiments and was recruited by French and British soldiers to spy for Britain during World War II. It was because of these espionage activities that the family was taken to the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp in 1944. With their father also being held as a POW, the children, including 5-year-old Marita, were taken to the children's ward of the camp. Miraculously, the whole family survived, and they moved to the United States soon after the war ended. She returned to Cuba and met her aborted son. By 1981, Marita had become more and more concerned about the safety of her children, and she began to worry that she needed protection from all of the dangerous men she had befriended and then informed on. Her need for protection led her back to the Cuban embassy in New York. There, she communicated by handwritten notes with the staff since she knew the building was under surveillance. Once confident that the embassy would hear her out, she requested a trip to Havana. While in Havana, Marita claims to have received the surprise of a lifetime, meeting the son whom she thought she had lost decades before. Although many people deny that she ever actually had a child with Fidel, her sister Valerie recalls picking Marita up from the airport in a state of shock, going on and on about how her son was alive. She had another child with a petty gangster. After she left the CIA, Marita posted up in NYC, working as an informant for the FBI and police department. In 1969, she gave birth to a son named Mark. She originally claimed that his father was a former New York City police chief. Later on, Marita changed the story about her son's father, since most of her family and friends seemed to already know the truth. Mark's real father was small-time gangster Eddie Levy, who had served prison time in Florida. Lorenz had figured that telling Mark his father was a police officer was better than someone who had been to jail, although she has identified several men over the years as his father. After 40 years, her biography was finally published. In 1976, Viking Press president Tom Ginsburg heard Marita's story and thought her life would make an interesting book. He was certainly not the first to think this, but he was the first to actually pay her an advance on her biography. She and a co-writer were paid $320,000, but the book was not written at that time. Viking Press was sold to Penguin, who then shelved the project. In March of 2017, Penguin finally published Marita Lorenz's biography, The Spy Who Loved Castro. Marita Lorenz's journey from bomb-ravaged Nazi Germany to the shadowy corridors of Cold War espionage reads more like a spy thriller than a true biography. Few lives are as chaotic, enigmatic, and captivating as hers. Born in 1939 in Bremen, Germany, to a German U-boat captain father and an American opera singer mother, Lorenz's life was shaped by war and ideology from the beginning. Marita's mother, who was said to have been a British spy, was detained by the Nazis during World War II, and Marita, a young child, spent a brief time with her family in the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. She would never truly recover from the war's trauma, but it did send her into a world of high-stakes politics, lies, and volatile relationships. After the war, the Lorenz family moved to the United States, where her mother became deeply embedded in the American anti-communist movement. It was perhaps inevitable that Marita would find herself swept up in the clandestine world of spies and revolutionaries. But no one could have predicted just how tangled and notorious her story would become. In February 1959, at just 19 years old, Marita was working as a staff member aboard the MS Berlin, a luxury cruise liner owned by her father. When the ship docked in Havana shortly after the Cuban Revolution had triumphed, the young Marita found herself face-to-face with the charismatic new leader of Cuba, Fidel Castro. As the boat approached, filled with scruffy rebels still wearing the aura of battle, she initially recoiled in fear. Then the bearded man in the lead, rifle slung over his shoulder, shouted up to her with a laugh, "Yo soy Cuba, Comandante Fidel Castro." That moment changed her life. Despite the age gap, Castro was 33. An immediate and intense romance blossomed between the two. Marita remained in Havana for several months, living in luxury at the Havana Hilton while she and Fidel began a passionate affair. But what began as a young woman's whirlwind romance with a revolutionary soon turned into a dark and twisted tale of love, betrayal, and espionage. In late 1959, she became pregnant with Castro's child. But 7 months into her pregnancy, things took a mysterious turn. Lorenz claimed that members of Castro's circle drugged her, and when she awoke in a hospital, she was informed that her baby had perished or been stolen. In various interviews across the decades, her story shifted, from a failed abortion to a child stolen and hidden from her. She shared a chilling memory in an interview with Vanity Fair in 1993. She later saw the child, now a doctor by the name of André, and was struck by the similarity. His skin, nose, and eyes. "It's real. My God, it's mine. It's got my mouth, my eyes. It's got Fidel's nose." But by then, the damage had long been done. Disillusioned, grieving, and angry, Lorenz returned to the United States. There, fueled by heartbreak and political pressure from her staunchly anti-communist mother, she was recruited by the CIA. Her mission: to return to Cuba and assassinate Fidel Castro. In what sounds like the plot of a Cold War noir, Lorenz was handed poison capsules to sneak into Cuba, a plan hatched with the cooperation of Cuban exiles and American intelligence operatives. However, her attempt was flawed, some would say sabotaged by her feelings. She hid the capsules in a jar of face cream, where they dissolved. When she met Fidel again, she couldn't bring herself to do it. According to her, he sensed her intentions. He reportedly handed her a pistol and said, "You can't kill me. Nobody can." Rather than pull the trigger, she fell into his arms one last time. This failure would haunt her for years, and some of her CIA handlers believed that, had she succeeded, the failed Bay of Pigs invasion might never have occurred. The spy who couldn't kill her lover faded from the Cuban story, only to reappear in one of the greatest American tragedies of the century. In 1977, Lorenz gave an interview claiming that in 1963, just months before the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, she had participated in a road trip from Miami to Dallas with members of Operation 40, a secret CIA assassination squad focused on eliminating Castro and other communist leaders. She claimed that Lee Harvey Oswald was one of her companions. Lorenz alleged she was part of the early stages of the plot to assassinate JFK, traveling with a convoy of men and weapons. However, she said she left the group before the killing, flying back to Miami in confusion and fear. She claims that she was unaware of the mission's nature until she heard about JFK's assassination while in the air. Her claim threw fuel onto decades of conspiracy theories, and while some dismissed her as an unreliable witness prone to exaggeration, others believed her account was too detailed to ignore. Her tale included CIA operatives, Cuban exiles, and infamous Watergate burglar Frank Sturgis, who later denied her version of events, saying, "She'll do anything for money." Yet Lorenz never entirely backed down, though her story did shift in minor details over the years. Whether delusional or deeply embedded in the most dangerous circles of Cold War intrigue, her narrative had become folklore. As if her entanglements with Fidel Castro and Lee Harvey Oswald weren't dramatic enough, Lorenz's life took another twist in 1961 when she began a torrid affair with the deposed Venezuelan dictator Marcos Pérez Jiménez. Monica, her daughter, claims that the affair got its start in Miami, where the exiled Pérez Jiménez lavishly courted her mother. Marita became pregnant once more within a month, despite the fact that he was married. For several years they lived quietly, and the former dictator provided for them generously, until legal troubles dried up his finances. In the aftermath of their breakup, Lorenz and Monica were left penniless.